Hey guys, I'm back from my World Cup experience in Goa, back at home and prepared to do some more interesting miniature videos. So I selected a few videos from the World Cup. I'm going to start off, we're going to kick things off with a game between Radoslav Wojtaszek, one of the Polish better players, number one for many years in Poland, with the white pieces, and Vladimir Fedoseev with the black pieces. Of course, Vladimir is 27-17, so a really strong player playing with black. This was their match, and in the first game of the match, Fedoseev lost with the white pieces. So now he had to win with black on demand. That's always very tricky against someone as strong as Wojtaszek. So we'll see what Vladimir tried to do, and let's see how it ended up for him. So in the first move, on the first move, Radek played d4, e6, proposing the French defense, c4, and Fedoseev played b6. Now this is the Owen defense, or the English defense. It's actually played as an English defense, but the Owen defense can transpose, so you can get here by different move orders. Considered to be tricky and actually quite good for a must-win on-demand situation for black. e4 is thought to be the most critical line. Modern games are playing bishop to b4 check here, but Fedoseev went with the old bishop to b7, hitting the pawn. And here, of course, knight to c3 would allow bishop to b4 with a good version of the Nimzo-Indian defense. So theory suggests that bishop to d3 is stronger, with the idea of not allowing black to pin the knight on c3. Now this is considered slightly better for white, but playable. Black has moves such as knight to c6, bishop to b4 check is also a move, against which king to f1 is strong. There are some other ideas. But Fedoseev, surprisingly, and actually quite unbelievably, played f5. And this is a blunder. It's a bad move, and it's known to be bad for many, many, many years. And of course, Fedoseev knows that it's bad, so why did he play it? He plays it because he is in an on-demand win situation with black, and he needs to do something out of the ordinary. And it nearly worked for him. So, why is it bad? Because after pawn takes pawn, which obviously Radek played very quickly, bishop takes g2, black will win the rook on h1, but the price he has to pay is very big. Check, only move g6, and now, of course, pawn takes pawn. Now, the pawn can't be recaptured for many reasons, because of the check, because of the rook. But here, theory suggests that knight f6 is bad, hitting the queen, because here we can play g7 check and pick up a new queen immediately. So theory suggests bishop to g7 to be the best move. As you can see, both players are playing very fast because they know the theory. Pawn takes pawn check, and king to f8. And here the idea is that I have a huge attack on the king side. The knight is mine whenever I want to, but I am losing the rook on h1. So here, Radek took a couple of minutes and played the correct bishop to g5, which is the correct move, knight to f6, and queen to h4. Up to here, Radek taking a bit of time to recall. He obviously didn't prepare this before the game, while Fedoseev is playing, he's blitzing out his move because this is specific preparation. If you check the computer, you'll see it says like +2. So both players know this is bad, but Radek is probably not sure if there is some new idea that he's missed in his preparation. So essentially, black is playing as a bluff. He's counting on Radek not remembering the analysis to win this position. Bishop takes rook, knight e2. The threat is now knight to f4 and a very strong check on g6. Therefore, knight to c6 is the answer. to be able to protect with knight to e7 if need be, or some e5 moves. Now here against knight to f4, specifically, black does have this e5 thrust, and apparently, according to theory, black is holding in this position. Quite unbelievably, but analysis suggests that black is holding here. Obviously, Fedoseev had this analyzed. But being a strong player as he is, against knight to c6, Radek had to find the correct move here. And I think that Fedoseev was banking on Radek missing the correct move. Because here, knight to f4 is a possibility, knight to c3 seems supernatural, but the correct move is knight to d2, with the idea of overprotecting these squares so that the bishop remains trapped. And if e5 comes and the pawn on d4 is taken as in the game, it won't hit knight on c3. Of course, we're just planning castle, picking up the bishop, and then taking advantage of a huge attack on the king side to win. Now, this was a winning idea, and it's what should be played if any of you get to this position. But Radek missed that. He played knight to c3, which is the normal move, and after e5 already, the computer suggests that this is equal and anything can happen now. Long castle, pawn takes pawn, hitting the knight. And here, white played rook takes h1, which is the move he'd prepared when he castled. Already Radek, very low on time. So actually, this worked out for Fedoseev. It was a good idea, and it worked out for him. He has a better position now, very tricky still, and much more time. What Radek should have done at this point is find a very difficult move, bishop to c2, just opening up the rook so that pawn takes knight can be answered by knight to f4. And although it's quite unbelievable, this position with these ideas is still a win for white, but hugely complicated, very difficult to find all these moves, of course, without the computer help. Radek played rook takes h1, d takes c3, knight to f4. It's still very tricky, anything can happen. Fedoseev, still in theory, in his preparation, blitzing out the moves. That's very annoying when your opponent blitzes out his moves. Bishop to c2, and now king to f7, not the best move for Radek, for Fedoseev. Probably the first move in his analysis. I don't think he'd considered bishop to c2 in his pre-game checks. The best move here was knight to f3, difficult to see, allowing this check. But the idea is to try and knock off the bishop on g5 and play this position. And here, black, according to the computer, is better. But it's so complicated. There's this check on e1. I mean, if I'm calculating this in my head, I'd be very worried that I could be completely losing here. But the computer holds this for black. Very, very tricky. Instead, Fedoseev played king to f7, trying to put a bit of control on this square here. And now, knight to h5 is a good move, hitting the pin. Knight to f3, queen to f4, anything can happen here. He knocks off the bishop, and we're about to arrive at the critical position. Both of the players are low on time, with a lot of calculations being done. And in this position, there is a threat on the bishop on g7 and some extra threats on g6, and of course the possibility of bringing in the rook. However, according to the computer, knight takes h5, this position is unbelievably still in the realm of equality. It's hard to know who's going to win here. Black does have an extra rook, but the combination of the bishop and the pawn on h7 sort of gives white enough counterplay to at least be able to force a draw in some variations, or even a win if black defends incorrectly. So I can already see some queen f5, some rook d5, f5 moves, some very nasty threats on black's undeveloped position. Notice that the bishop and the pawn, funnily both players have bishops and pawns on the 7th, does have some impact on the evaluation of the position. But instead of this, Fedoseev crumbled. He played queen to f8, which is a huge blunder. He played it almost immediately, and he got hit by bishop to g6, after which he promptly resigned. Of course, king to e7 would be the only move. The rook immediately comes in, and what I'm thinking that Fedoseev must have missed is that rook to e8 wins because the knight is pinned by the queen. I can only think this must be what he must have missed. I just don't see any other reason why he would have played queen to f8, missing this bishop to g6, rook e1, e8 threat. It's just of course, my supposition, but it must be that. So I brought you this game because I really wanted you to see one of the most lively, interesting games with a lot on the line. Radek won the game and crossed. I even said a couple of words with him after the game on the way into the passage. And Fedoseev was actually quite probably annoyed with the result of the game, bearing in mind that he did have a winning position and that his opening idea had worked for him. Although we do know that this is a bad move to play. But as you can see, with good computer analysis and the element of surprise, anything can work nowadays in chess. Hope you enjoyed. Leave a comment below and see you in the next video. Take care, guys.